Hello and welcome to the Weird Record Club. In this channel, we're going to explore the weird, the wonderful, the novelty, the comic, the psychedelic, the downright odd. And today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my musical Greek odyssey, and I'll tell you where I think you should look for the best and the strangest Greek psychedelia in Greek. Anyway. I used to be an English teacher in Greece. I lived in Greece for 3 years. And so, as a young man in my early 20s, I was really excited about going to Greece, listening to Greek music and seeing what it was all about there in the flesh. And I was sent to a small town in the north of Greece, in the Balkan Mountains. The town's called Florina, and it was sort of on the border near Albania. It's only about 10 miles from Albania. It was only about 10 miles away from from Yugoslavia, as it was then, showing my age. But when I got there, sort of my first musical memory was that I was being driven by the head of the school and to my new flat, and there was this passing a market, and there was this strange exotic music coming from the market, and I said, "Wow, I really like Greek folk music," and the head turned to me in disgust and said, "Pah, it's Yugoslavian pop music." So that showed how much I knew. But from my time in Greece, I sort of came to listen to the radio, and I came to really like sort of Greek folk music and Greek pop music as well, some of it. And I ended up, while I was a teacher during the early evening, I ended up working in a bouzouki joint later, at weekends. From about 10 o'clock or something, I would start and play a few Western songs before the Greek singers came on. Now, these bouzouki joints were very strange places. They opened even later than the bars do. There were no licensing laws in Greece when I was there, so pubs closed when they wanted to. And then you go to a bouzouki joint when the bar closed. And they were sort of very showy, but also a little bit tacky. The kind of music you get there was a kind of popular music that they called skiladica, which means dog songs. And it was sort of a Greek folk with a sort of Arabian, Middle Eastern influence. And the singers would pride themselves on their melisma, that sort of vocal acrobatics that they used to do. And, there'd be a band with a bouzouki, probably maybe with keyboards, electric guitars and drums and so on. So I got to hear a lot of these popular songs, dog songs, at the time. Now, the reason why they were called dog songs, there are a couple of theories. One is because the singers sounded like dogs, and another is because these bouzouki joints would serve disgusting rubbery veal, and because they couldn't sell it, it was so horrible, they'd just throw it out for the dogs. So there'd always be a pack of dogs hanging around the back door. The bouzouki joint that I worked in, on the one hand, like I said, it was sort of tacky and glitzy, but it was also really expensive if you wanted to buy a drink. They didn't serve beer or anything else. They only served 2 drinks, which were champagne or whiskey. And the Greeks wouldn't drink whiskey as it is. They'd always mix it with Coca-Cola. I mean, come on, you imagine that. They'd look at you as if you're mad. You're a raging alcoholic if you dare to say no thanks to Coke in your whiskey. But anyway, I got all the free whiskey I could drink when I was there. That was a perk of the job. Now, one of the interesting things that I remember about being in that atmosphere, every weekend for several years, was that it was a way where the wealthy would display their wealth, because whenever a singer, there was the band that stayed the same, and then a roster of 3 or 4 singers would come on and sing these famous dog songs. And whenever one of these singers sang somebody's favorite song from the audience, he would say, he'd jump up and shout to the waiter, give that singer a crate of champagne, and the waiter would toddle off and come back with this huge crate full of bottles of champagne, and he'd open one bottle, pour a glass out and give it to the singer, would sort of toast the guy who'd bought him this crate, touch it to his lips and pretend to drink it, and then they'd carry it off. And I thought, why would you do that? A crate of champagne must be really expensive. And what are the singers going to do with all these crates of champagne that they keep getting? Well, it turned out, of course, it was a bit of a ruse, because they'd simply just take the open bottle out of the crate and put another one in, and then sell the same crate again and again. The singers didn't take it home, of course. It was pretty crap champagne anyway. But it was that strange, ostentatious display of wealth that was something really new to me. The band was very traditional in the backing that they had, but they did have an electric guitarist and they had a drummer. And I seem to remember that the drummer and one of the singers had a bit of an antagonism going, and the drummer had bought this horrible disco sounding sound effect that went boo 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 boo, and he used to really antagonize the singer by the singer be singing his heart out, doing all this acrobatic melismatic display, and then the drummer would just go boo boo at the end of it. But anyway, I spent quite a long time in listening to this kind of music, but what I really wanted to find was Greek psychedelia, because the way English psychedelia reflects English life, and the same with American psychedelia. So I wasn't so interested in the Greek psych and rock bands that were trying to be Western bands. I wanted really interested ones that were sort of taking psychedelic music in a Greek direction. So, for example, Aphrodite's Child would be a good example. Although they sang in English, there's something very Greek about them. Same with Demis Roussos's first album, Fire and Ice on the Greek Side of My Mind, which I talked about in an earlier video. But today I'm going to mention one of my favourite Greek psychedelic albums from the original psychedelic era. I think it was released 1970, might have been a year or two other hand. It's a bit hard to tell with the labels, and that is by George Romanos, Yorgos Romanos, or Yorgos Romanos, because Greeks say the before a person's name, so the George Romanos. So he was mainly a sort of a folk singer, and he sang sort of Greek ballads that might be used in film soundtracks. I've got a couple of his early folk albums up behind me, but started to see something different with this album, Romanos Live and in the Studio. Now, side one is standard Greek ballads, very nice. That's the live side. But side two takes a very different turn, and you've got a bit of psychedelia creeping in. It was Aphrodite's Child, of course, with Vangelis and Demis Roussos are the band on side two. So that makes it interesting. But where Romanos really takes off is in this legendary Greek psychedelic album. It's called Δύο μικρά γαλάζια άλογα, which means two little blue horses. This is a reissue. Obviously, if you want an original one, you're not going to get much change out of £1,000. So collectors are mad for this wonderful, very interesting piece of Greek psychedelia. Let me show you the back. There we have it. Well, and I think the reason why it's one of my favourites is because it's not just aping Western psychedelia, it's bringing in something new. So you've got wigged out raga rock with fuzz guitar and wah-wah guitar, but it feels like a very Greek style of playing it, almost if it's like an electric bouzouki. There are some references to the Byrds and other pop hits, 8 Miles High and so on, in some of the songs, which are always fun. And we've got these sort of crazy wig outs, and they're interspersed with these sort of harpsichord-like ballads that hark back to the earlier stuff. So in many ways it seems to be a bit like Donovan around the era of Hurdy-Gurdy Man, where you got heavier sort of psych type tracks mixed with these more delicate ballads. So it's pretty easy to find. You'll probably be able to get it on YouTube or streaming services. Reissues on CD are very, reasonably priced. Same with, I presume, with the reissued albums. Standout tracks include Life is a Dream, the last track on side 2, which has the sort of 8 Miles High references, as well as the opening track, the Omikra Galazia Alaga, 2 Little Blue Horses. There's bits of sound effects as well going through it, which gives it a psychedelic feel. So on the whole, I think this is the place to start if you are looking to get into some weird and wonderful Greek psychedelia. So this might be the next step after exploring Aphrodite's Child. I mean, the language, this is all in Greek language, so you have to forget about the words if you don't know Greek and just enjoy the strange psychedelic Greekness of it. Anyway, I will leave you with the burning questions of what do little blue horses eat? You can put your answers in the comments, and Kali Nikta.